is a very strong evidence that improvements in health outcomes can come from increased investment in the health systems. There is a very strong evidence that health has good returns on investments in terms of employment, in terms of reduction in presenteeism, in terms of improvements in the cognitive capabilities of children and so forth. And very often it's an issue of changing the conversation. So when health, ministries discuss with Ministry of Finance or Economy, they would say health is good because it's a value. We all want to be in good health. But the argument needs to be put in terms of what is the returns of investment, in terms of improvement in productivity, in terms of growth, and in terms of the fact that investment in health is made in those areas of the health systems that do deliver the maximum returns. So it's not that any dollar which is invested does deliver the maximum returns. There are clearly areas where there is more need for investment than others. It's quite clear that cuts on prevention do not help. But there is, broader issues of reorienting health system to be much more in line with the change in epidemiology and the profiles of the populations, which is increasingly also aging, which has more chronic conditions, and how to deal with the twin epidemiological challenge of a country like Mexico, where on the other hand you still have quite high infant mortality rates with very, very good achievements which have been made, but still quite high. And on the other hand, you have chronic conditions which are growing. You have diabetes, you have heart failures, you have a number of those more illness which are typical of the more mature societies in OECD countries. So getting that right requires really putting the arguments in the right way and focusing the efforts on those type of investments where the returns are the highest. Well, there is probably a very large and rich agenda I mentioned already, but it's clearly important to have that investment in preventions, particularly with the epidemic of obesity and diabetes. That's clearly something that needs to happen, and it needs to happen with the responsibility of everybody. Secondly, I think there can be probably ways to improve the efficiency even of the scarce resources that there are. It's quite notorious and understood that in Mexico you have a quite complex governance system with, it's like the state services, the different insurance, and in a way it would be much help us to have a more level playing field, something which requires better coordination and integration between the different systems. Mexico has got still quite high out-of-pocket payments, so addressing the issues of the payments that the populations have themselves and understanding where there are perhaps areas where there needs to be more investment to reduce the burden on populations. That's another also important areas. More broadly, really reorienting the health systems so that you can invest in the primary care services, in population-based services, in community services. Even in the workforce, there are a lot of things that can be done. We know that Mexico has got fewer doctors and fewer nurses, especially compared to the OECD average. But there are a lot of things that nurses or even community workers can do.